have on the line Mr. Linvern Wright, the principal of the William Knibb Memorial High School, right there in Falmouth, yeah? Trelawney, yeah, where we come from, you're going to say embarrassed, right? He's also the president of the secondary school President's Association. I need to get it right though. He's the president of the secondary school principals of secondary
You want
schools.
me to help you call it
Yes,
Jamaica
because
Association of Principals of Secondary Schools?
something is going wrong with me.
It is Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools.
The Jamaica Association of
Principals of Secondary Schools.
Principals of Secondary Schools. Is that tongue twister this one, you know?
No, it's not. If you know it well, it doesn't become that. It's practice you need.
See?
And you have spoken to me too often not to be saying it well. But that's fine.
I know that you've beat me up properly this morning. I will tell you why after I'm not clicking, but life is like that. I'm not 100%.
No problem, sir. I'm good.
My friend, it's
Yes,
good
sir.
to have you. And you know, I believe in having educators, especially a leader like you, on this program because there's a lot to be said. And you know, my concern that we have persons who are up front and really I question their credibility, their class, their style, everything. And I think we need people more like you talking to the nation. So every single child, every parent, every politician should know this president, the president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools. So you're not gonna give me a ticket for that one.
Yes, sir. But whether or not that is happening, so that's all good.
Right. Now, where do you want to start this morning? Because there are quite a number of issues. There's appointment of school boards and the caliber of school boards. There's a Jamaica Teaching Council. There's so many things. There's discipline in our schools, quite a number of things. Where would you want to start, sir?
Well, I think the most current thing is the Jamaica Teaching Council bill. As you recognize, it is something that is very controversial. My position on it is that most things are okay with it. It is as far as I understand it, in keeping with the way other bills or other professional standards, regulations are conceived of and regulated.
Yes.
Right. So there isn't much, but teachers have some issues with some things, but some of them I think maybe we just need to clarify better for ourselves. So for example, the fines that are considered to be punitive are not as punitive, because what I found, for example, when I read the bill, is that, for example, that $500,000 fine for teachers to be charged if it is that they are not registered comes after 2 periods of 21 days notice. So in the first section, if you are not registered, you are given 21 days notice. That's 21 working days.
Yes.
If you persist beyond that 21 days, you get another notice, right? So that's 42 days notice. If you persist beyond that, your employer is notified. And having notified your employer, you're supposed to cease working. If you are so defiant that you go beyond that to go to work, I think in all fairness, I think natural justice has been more than meted out in that regard. And a $500,000 fine is something that anybody who is worthy of being a teacher would be deserving of, if it is that you go beyond all of those 3 chances that you have, right? Then the other sections of the bill, there's a section...
Before you go further though,
yes.
How about finding the administration, the school board?
Well, I wouldn't
it seemed to me that the school board and the principal also have a responsibility to ensure that all staff members are registered.
Yes. Yes,
that is where I think we should start. And how I make a simple suggestion.
No, but you see, look here. At the end of the day, Vernon, we have got there are some things in that. My position on this has just to do with the facts, because I'm not going to have any opinion on something that's there as a fact in law.
Yes.
In law, natural justice has been followed for the teacher. We can make another argument for administrators if we want to, and I'm fine. I wouldn't necessarily get into that now. But the point I'm making is that in law and in common law and natural justice, I think that there's a fairness in that, and I don't have any
Good.
issues with it. I might disagree with some of my colleagues on it, and it's
Yes.
not disagreement that is not amicable, because
Good.
we work like that.
There
But
is
I think
law,
that
but I'm
right,
also looking at, we're talking about AI, we're talking about efficiency. Uh,
right.
I will tell you, many of us who put our laws together, we are kind of backward. Even the way the law is written is not written
Yeah,
for
but
the
that's a
ordinary
different
person.
point
No, I'm, I
still.
don't, I'm going to tell you, it's not a
Yeah.
different point. What I'm trying to tell you. So
Mhm.
even, we conceive the law is quite backward. For example, if you have national ID, you have a way of registering all teachers. Then the moment a teacher is not registered, then that teacher, that should send a message to the Minister of Education. That person would not be getting any pay, and the school will be advised automatically. You're wasting
Right.
the time of the judicial system to be fining and going to court. I'm not saying that we need to look at more efficient ways
I
of
mean, those
dealing
are
with the
things that
problem.
no one could quarrel with. I mean, nobody would quarrel with that you tie that into the system and the system
Yeah.
flags you.
No, the
I mean,
reason I'm saying that, is
right,
that
right.
as a country, we need to
Mhm.
think. We don't need to depend on AI. We can
Right,
be, or what should I call it? NI, natural intelligence.
right.
That whole idea of fines and penalty, it is backward, Mr. Principal. It is stupid. There's no way to go that route. All you
Mhm.
have to do, I'm one of us that have been pushing for national ID for probably over 30 odd years. You have a national ID, you're registered as a teacher, you are no longer registered. A message is sent to the ministry and to the school immediately, because the system would know which school you're assigned to. So when the teacher turns up to school, you already have your thing saying to you, not a registered teacher. We need to move away from all that bureaucracy and pack it up our judicial system with fines where we have criminals to deal with. So think about that very seriously. And I know it can be done.
Well, I hear you. I said I'm just dealing with what I see in the bill before me that
But
I'm
I
dealing
put
with.
it to you, what is it? The bill
No,
is created by somebody, are created by people. And
no,
I'm telling you,
the debate is created by many things outside
right.
of that. That's one of them in
And
my
I'm
mind.
putting it to you that their thinking is very limited, in terms of the thinking of the law, and not in terms of IT that are in a broad way. Because if they were,
Yes, and Vernon, another way in
mm,
which the thinking is limited too
yes,
is I believe that there's an undercurrent that suggests there's a structure, there's an underlying structure to this, an
mhm.
underlying thinking to the JTC bill to me that seems to suggest that JTC bill is going to fix teaching and teachers.
Yes, tell me about
Are
that one. How is it going to
so
fix
good.
that now?
I don't agree with that because I
Yeah,
believe that, so I want to deal with that and deal with maybe about three or four other factors that we have to pay some attention to. So
right.
one, for example, teaching is in crisis internationally. Many,
Really?
many people are not gravitating towards teaching any at all. So England is suffering, USA is suffering, many countries are suffering, right?
That's why they take away our teachers.
Right. And a huge part of our problem with teaching in Jamaica is that many people don't like when you say this, but I don't think teachers are valued. They're not valued in terms of money and they're not valued in terms of social status, right?
But that's
So,
not, nobody can argue that, Mr. Principal.
no,
That's
no,
a
but I'm
fact.
just, but yes, but the very obvious is not normally obvious to our politicians, except for where they have a personal interest. So it's something that
I
we have
love
to,
that.
right.
Yes,
So,
yes,
that is something. So we have to state the obvious because for them it is not something that they pay attention to unless somebody says it. So,
yes, yes.
for one, the view. So there is more that has to be done. So, for example, the conditions under which we have teachers working. If you take science labs, for example, I give you an example. There
Yes.
is the Jamaica Transformation Education Commission, that one of the things the reports said coming out of the Patterson report is that we are maybe at about 60% complete in terms of technical vocational
Let's make
education.
it clear. The Patterson is not Mr. PJ Patterson. Is
No, no, it's Orlando Patterson.
Orlando
Right,
Patterson.
right. So they're saying that bill, that no, not that bill, that is that it's a high percentage complete. I think over 60% complete. But the
Yes.
minister on her tours to school looked in tech voc labs and said that are at one of the most atrocious levels, my words, that she has ever seen. And we cannot
Uh-oh.
get away with that. No, that's to me, that to me is a contradiction
Mm-hmm.
of the Rosa report that was given,
Yes.
right? No, that's one thing. But I'm also using that to justify the point that one of the things that we have a challenge with is resources. And I'm not saying it will ever be enough, but our science labs are not up to scratch. Many of our schools are not up to scratch. The spaces in which teachers work are not up to scratch. Where students learn are not up to scratch. Right now, one of the things we are seeing for example, there is no way we could tell, for example, our private sector people to work in conditions that are as hot as we're asking children to learn in, right? And we are thinking that we want the best out of these children. A principal works in an air conditioned, just to put it on myself, we maybe have teachers, but we have the
Mm.
children learning in spaces that are not air conditioned. It's hot. And they are already restless, ADHD, adverse childhood experiences, those things. And that's one of the things. The third thing that we are not doing in education is that we're not funding education properly. They don't want us to talk about funding, but we're not funding education properly. So, for example, this year in the capital budget, we allocated $4 billion for new expenditure in education. But the Patterson the Education Transformation Oversight Committee commissioned work from Mona School of Business suggests that we want $21 billion a year for the next 8 years at least,
Wow, I have to hold it
right?
here. So when we come back, I
Right.
sound like you're going to talk more money, but we have to go for the break. When we come back, I want to hear more from you. I tell you, your argument can't do it. That's why we need to hear from you more often, because if we're going to move this nation, education is needed to move it. Good. Mr. Wright?
Yes, sir, I'm back.
Good, you're back. Now, we're talking about the money.
Yes.
I think you mentioned over 4 billion.
Yes. Well, that's what's in the capital budget. No.
Right, to the capital. Oh, that's just the capital budget, not the
So
recurring.
it's in fact an increase over last financial year of maybe about $2.1 billion because it was about 1.9.
But
So
is that a real increase or just a nominal increase?
it's both.
It's both. Okay.
I think it's both because I'm being fair. But the point I'm making is that for
Mm.
what is needed to transform education, so that's why the labs look the way they are. They are looking. That's why, for example, we can't get so many things in place. So that's one thing in terms of funding. A second thing in terms of funding is that high schools have been operating on the same operational budget since 2016. And that's 9 years now. We're operating on the same money. And there's
9 years now?
9 years. So it was
That must be wrong.
$17,000. It's not wrong. It's 17,000. Nobody in the ministry can refute this.
Yes.
17,000 per student per annum. So that's
Yes.
$1,700 per month per child, right? To buy paper, to be involved in sports,
Mm-hmm.
to do any kind of professional development training you're doing. All of these things are things that are things that you have to do. So that's one of the things. It's worse in primary schools because primary schools they had a little increase because they were about 2,500. I put $500 on it. So it's $300 per month per child in primary school. And that's where we have most of our literacy challenges, where we need most of our interventions, if it is that we're not going to have them at high school level.
Especially pre-primary.
Right. So really, not to mention even pre-primary, we may be spending some money on pre-primary and doing whatever, but the fact is
Yes.
that at pre-primary, the problems are more than that. So there's an attempt, for example, to move our teachers from those schools from just having non-trained teachers to at least one.
Yes.
I think they're about in the high percent, maybe about in the 60s, completed with that. But the one teacher doesn't work because all of those children need teachers who are highly qualified, who understand language and play and the science of learning in a much more complex way than
And
I
who
think.
can probably identify learning challenges at that early stage.
Right. So all of these things are things that, so in terms of diagnostic work, we need to have that.
Well, but before you continue, though, it's clear that funds are needed. But on the other hand, parents and students must understand that education is not free. And I would question to what extent they value the education. They go to turn up at school anytime. they leave school. Well, some of them they can't be blamed, but they haven't been attending school, and there are sometimes there are good reasons for that.
Well,
But
well,
I
well,
do
well,
get the
well, well,
impression,
well, you've brought me to another point.
yes.
That a huge part of the problem with how we deal with legislation is that we deal with legislation in a silo, in a vacuum. Because our legislation and the horrible part of our legislation is enforcement. Because parents, for example, there are parents who have children not going to school for how long? But I hardly think that the mechanisms in place to ensure that these people are accountable
So let
are
me ask
not
you something. We don't charge
as
the
stringent
parents
as they ought to.
500, half a million for that sending the children to school. Since we're going to charge the teachers for
I
not
didn't
being
hear you.
registered. As I since we are going to, it's proposed that we charge teachers who are not registered. What about the parents who do not send their children
And
to
and, and,
school?
and, 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 and that's my point. It is not just about registration. So you want to ensure that we have teachers there, but that we are paying and we have teachers there. How are people accessing what it is we have there? Because in many
Yes.
instances, it is not that what ought to be isn't happening at schools. It may not be happening to the quality many people want in some instances, but the fact is that it is there. What is happening is that many people are not accessing it. So we're wasting billions of dollars paying teachers, billions of dollars putting in the limited resources in schools, billions of dollars transporting our children to school on subsidies. And then there are those who will go sometimes, not go sometimes. And the parents who have that authority to send them out daily are not held to any account.
So let me
Lots of,
ask you, Mr. Principal,
yes.
why is it? I really don't know. Well, even that same bill that you're talking about, though, many of us have never seen it. I don't know if the parents have seen it. Why is it that the concept after 20 odd years, it's 20 odd years, I think we'll be on it. We have just concentrating on a bill relating to teachers and not to parentage or a code of conduct for students. Why didn't we have an overall thing so everybody knows what are their responsibilities in terms of making sure that they make good use, even though the
So,
resources
so,
are
so, so
limited.
Vernon,
Yes.
but Vernon, I'm underscoring the point I made earlier that a huge part of our problems is that we don't have bills that are complementary to the ones that we have and want to have teeth. Because bills and laws have teeth because there's support for it around there. So if for example, we're thinking of ensuring that parents are that we want education to function in the way it ought to function,
Yes.
or our CDA and our laws outside of that have to be functioning because teachers can't go out there to get parents in the way the CDA should. Are the CDA offices properly resourced? If you're talking about for
What's the
example,
CDA?
Child Development Agency,
Mhm.
right?
What about our
CDA.
social workers? What
Right, that's
role
the
do
point
they
I'm
play?
making is that these are the people who have to deal with those things. So the fact is that we have, in my mind, a cocktail of things or a combo of things that we need to have in place to get education rolling. What we are indeed doing with JTC bill is to suggest that it is a panacea, and it is not. It is a necessary ingredient in the combo of things that are needed, but it's not a panacea. We maybe now could move to some other things about education, but that's my little bit on the bill. There maybe is one other thing that I like to say about the bill, that teachers are concerned about the cost of registration, because there's nothing in the bill that says what that is. It does say that the body, Jamaica Teaching Council, as constituted, will have the
Regulations will come after I
latitude
gather.
to say what,
Mhm.
right, to say what these things are going to be. So it's awaiting those things to see what it is they are going to be. There are some concerns about a few other things, but I really believe that what we ought to be advocating for in education are for those things that can be properly supportive of education, supportive of teaching, supportive of resources, supportive of children who have particular concerns in terms of the diagnostic work to be done on them, the kind of targeted assessment to be done on them, that
Mhm.
those resources are put in place, that, maintenance of buildings, ensuring that we just have enough resources all around for children in tech, voc, in science. Those are things that I feel that strong advocacy ought to be. And I would love to see, for example, our members of parliament or people in parliament advocate as strongly and become as strident about ensuring that the governments that many of them claim to support on behalf of poor people in Jamaica
I
are
disagree with you,
strident in
sir.
their support for these things to happen on behalf of Jamaican people
I
and
disagree with
Jamaican
you, sir.
education system. Eh?
I disagree with you. You're
Yeah.
expecting too much of our parliamentarians. Why think you're here today?
Well, I don't know if
You
you can I don't know if you can disagree with me to expect too much of people who are paid a whole lot.
you should be law, you know. But let me tell you, if I wish, well, I have to keep not get myself into trouble. But let me tell you something, sir. It will have to come from, well, I've given up on the parents. You will have to enlighten the parents, principals, and teachers. It seems as if you will have to lead the way, sir. Because I will tell you, you have to understand, politics is important to win a seat.
Mhm.
And unless the people are making up noise about a particular issue, it doesn't become politically expedient to push certain things. You're not looking to win a seat.
No.
Therefore, you will have to continue to push. That is why you're here. And as long as I can, I'm not telling you the full story. I speak to you after.
Mhm.
Make sure you don't get too busy. But as long as I'm here, I will continue to facilitate this process because principals and teachers will have to be more strident. They have to stand up more. There was a time when the Governor General was a teacher,
Mhm.
ministers of government, so teachers and so on. You no longer have that situation. You have a few there still, and probably not.
Teachers and people of your ilk and my ilk can no longer enter politics because now it is about your having resources. Well, I think our politics, I mean, it's not what I'm here to talk about. Our politics
Yes.
is not going to be sufficiently representative by the people of this country because you have to have some money. You have to buy your way into this thing as far as I'm concerned. But
But
that's not what I'm here to talk
that's why
about.
you call me politics though. That's not how they will say. They say you pack it off in long.
Right,
What a
right,
life,
right, right,
what a
right,
life.
right,
And teachers'
right.
pockets, even if it's long, it's empty. All right, let me take a quick little musical break. When we come back, and it's up to you now. When you come back, you're going to speak to the nation and you're going to tell our political leaders, no business with a PMP, JLP, all them are the same difference. Speak to them and the parents and the teachers of this country when we come back. Mr. Wright?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now, you are the Prime Minister of Jamaica. Speak to the nation, sir.
No, I figure there are just a number of things that we have to deal with that we should. I really hope that we get on track the recommendations, especially those having to do with early childhood education, as suggested by the Patterson report going. I think one of the things that is really hitting us in the face as a country now is investments in social development that would complement what is happening in schools, big time. The fact is that many of our children are not coming to school with the social capital that is necessary for them to be learning. So they need to be coming in with the levels of literacy, with the levels of understanding of international issues and local issues, and particular issues having to do with the environment and finances and even just how we relate to each other as human beings. Really, really having some serious challenges with that. And there is need for the what I call the ecosystem of management in government to deal with those things. The fact is that many of our children are involved in violence. They are exposed to so much in terms of adverse childhood experiences. Very little about how our schools are organized. Do we have sufficient human resources to handle many of these issues? So for one, many of the things that are happening with children now are new phenomena that teachers have not been trained to handle. Maybe in a deep way, they might have been, in a cursory way introduced to it because, okay, it's touch a little of this and touch a little of that, or touch and go. That's one of the things that I think we have to pay significant attention to. Significant numbers of our children have to face abuse, sexual abuse, um, drug abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and coming into schools. There are so many of them who are not used to your speaking with them in a manner that is respectful, in a manner that in their mind is soft, to handle many of what it is they're going through. And so it becomes disruptive of the learning process. One of the things we haven't paid sufficient attention to are phones and how phones are affecting our boys and our girls in terms of their attention span. Many of them, for example, you take the phones from them, they are developing withdrawal symptoms as if they were on dopamine because
What?
the sections of their brains that are activated by phones and the social media are the same sections of the brain that are activated when someone is taking dope. And so the aggression and the kinds of withdrawal behaviors that are associated with these things are the same kinds of things that we have the children having to or displaying. Many teachers really have little tools to deal with this, or guidance counters don't have sufficient
Mr.
resources to
Principal,
handle many of these
I
things.
am
Yes, sir.
in shock. I
Yes.
have never heard it expressed like that. This
Yes.
is, you know, sir, and it's like I'm not a bright, was never a bright student like you're a bright student. You have to say all of that for me because I'm sure I didn't hear very well, and I'm sure many listeners didn't hear about that phone. I've
Yes.
always had my concern. Please repeat, as Jamaicans will say, repeat it again.
Well, the thing with phones, is that
Yes,
you see the thing with us is
yes.
that we are consumers of phones. The countries that are producers of it are the ones that are the wealthy countries now. So East Asia, where most of our phones in the world are produced. In fact, many of those countries have highly restricted regulations and policies regarding phones in their schools
Oh,
because the research has shown that it is a serious distraction. France has policies that are dealing with it. Many of the Scandinavian countries are now recognizing that. So the fact is that I think we, for example, in the name of freedom,
yes.
right? But is freedom disguised, or it is consumerism disguised as freedom, that we have
Oh.
our people using phones in the way we're having it? Because many
So we
people,
are
for
consumers and
example,
not creators.
right, but that's clear. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing with cars. I mean, what is it that happens, for example? Because a huge point of what we need to make now is that when
Yes.
somebody is strong on business, is not development in innovations. We
Yes.
are we as a country are really weak on innovation, but you cannot be strong on innovation if your schools are weak on software inclusion and development. If your children cannot go into coding, if your children are not thinking beyond simply using phones and creating software,
And
those
play
are the kinds
games.
of things that we really don't have. We're right. At the end of the day, our children who we claim are good with technology are not good with creating it. They are good consumers of technology. And I'm saying we have got to move ourselves away from that, where it is about consumption rather than about production and innovation. We are not there in how we should deal with it. One of the other points that I'd love to make, I mean, I think many
Mr.
people.
Listen, you're making too many important points. You said,
Will you ask
because
me
we said the
to
young
talk?
people, look,
Yeah.
but my brain is so good like yours. I have to take time. You said something a while ago about people saying that the young people are into technology, but they're into consuming technology, not into. Listen, that's a very profound statement, Mr. Principal. I'm telling you this.
I realize our time is coming to an end, but there's a point
Yes,
I'd like to make.
yes,
A quick point I'd love to make is that one of the things that I think we have got to look at again. Just imagine if Jamaica were turning out 80% of students doing well in technology and innovation and doing well in our system. There is nothing in our government sector or private sector to
yes.
absorb that level of success if an education system were to get that. Although I would consider it a very good problem to have. But a part of what we're not doing is that I think our private sector and government are being spared
Yes.
by the fact that our results in education are not as good as we want them to be.
Mhm.
Because, for example, I don't know that, for example, universities are in a position to absorb a certain level of success within our and as a study has to be done for that within our school system. Our private sector could not absorb the skills if it is that we were there and we were producing those things.
Yes.
Because again, our private sector, most of our companies in the private sector are merchandising. They buy from China, they buy from overseas, whatever. It is not that we are producing and we're going anywhere. So I hear private sector talking. I think private sector comes in for some kind of critique because they themselves are not people who are helping us as schools
To
to say, okay,
create.
out there, these are the kinds of jobs in innovation and creativity that are out there. There are just jobs in the talking about our children just being business people who are doing business. Everybody talking about being entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs of what? Is it entrepreneur of creativity, entrepreneur of innovation, or entrepreneurs of buy and sell? That's the
Mr.
easiest kind of
Normally, I would
entrepreneurship to do.
ask to make your final point, but you have to make a quick final point because guess what? What you have
Yeah.
said today, sir, that would never make the headlines, but I'll be doing my best to make sure, especially you mentioned about the private sector, they just move the buying and selling from the suitcase to the stores. But the creativity of helping our people to create so that we can
Very little,
smash the world.
very little is invested in that, sir.
My God. Mr. Now I know how that I'm not smart. I'm talking to a brilliant principal. And thank you for beating me up today. But it's not only me alone, it's to beat up
No, man,
politicians,
I'm
beat
fine,
up the
Vernon,
business people.
and thanks for having me.
And by the way, all that you
Yeah.
need to get a strap or a key, they need a meeting, Mr. Principal. They need a meeting.
Okay, sir.
We
And
will
I'll
have you.
attend to it.
We'll have you again. Please understand that your role is not just in the classroom. Your role is also to speak to the nation. Have a
Bless you, sir. Take
wonderful
care of
day.
yourself.
Mr. Linvern Wright, the principal of William Knibb Memorial High School, yeah, that's in Falmouth, Trelawney, and also president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools.